Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. I hope you're all doing great. Today, I'm going to explain a brand new Chinese fantasy drama called Son of Odin. This is an incredible story filled with mystery, powerful action, emotional moments, shocking betrayals, and unforgettable plot twists. In this video, I'll take you through the complete story from beginning to end, explaining every major event in a simple and easy-to-follow way so you won't miss any important details. If you enjoy fantasy dramas with hidden identities, immortal warriors, family conflicts, and epic battles between good and evil, then you're definitely going to love this one. So, grab your favorite snack, sit back, relax, and stay with me until the very end, because every scene builds toward an amazing finale that you won't want to miss. Now, without wasting any more time, let's dive straight into the complete story of Son of Odin. The city of Ravenshield awakened beneath a sky painted with soft shades of orange as the first rays of sunlight reflected from towering glass buildings and elegant mansions. It was a city where wealth determined respect, influence opened every door, and power often mattered more than honesty. At the very center of the city stood the magnificent Ashford estate, a place admired by outsiders as the home of one of the country's most successful business families. From a distance, the mansion looked like a symbol of perfection, surrounded by beautifully trimmed gardens, expensive luxury cars, and security guards standing at every entrance. Yet behind those polished walls, not every member of the family lived a life of respect. Before dawn, while the rest of the mansion remained silent, one man quietly stepped into the garden carrying nothing more than a watering can. Dressed in plain clothes that looked years old, he carefully watered every flower with the same patience he showed every morning. His movements were calm and graceful, almost as though he carried no worries despite the constant humiliation he faced every day. This quiet man was known to the Ashford family simply as Ethan, the husband nobody wanted. To the family, Ethan was an embarrassment. He had no impressive career, drove no luxury car, and never attended elite business meetings. He spent his mornings helping elderly servants, repairing broken furniture, trimming trees, and cleaning parts of the estate before anyone even asked. Many believed he was simply trying to earn his place inside the mansion, but the truth was far beyond anything they could imagine. As he finished watering the last flower, an elderly gardener approached with a heavy wooden box. "You don't have to carry this yourself," Ethan said with a warm smile. The old man chuckled. "At my age, everything feels heavy." Without another word, Ethan lifted the box as though it weighed nothing and carried it across the courtyard. The gardener smiled with quiet gratitude. "I've always believed you're different from what people say." Ethan simply smiled. "Sometimes," he replied gently, "the truth doesn't need to be explained." Inside the mansion, breakfast preparations were already underway. Family members gathered around the enormous dining table decorated with silver plates and expensive crystal glasses. Conversations centered around stock markets, international investments, and the upcoming Founders Summit, where the Ashford family hoped to secure one of the largest business partnerships in their history. When Ethan quietly entered the dining room carrying nothing more than a cup of tea, several relatives immediately exchanged amused looks. "Look who's here," one cousin laughed loudly. "Our professional housekeeper." Another uncle smirked. "I was beginning to think he'd finally found a job." The room erupted with laughter. Ethan calmly took his seat without saying a word. One of the younger cousins leaned forward. "Tell me something, Ethan. Isn't it embarrassing living off your wife's family?" More laughter followed. Across the table sat Elena Ashford, Ethan's wife. She lowered her eyes in silent discomfort. Although she disliked these constant insults, she never defended him either. Deep inside, she still believed her grandfather had made a terrible mistake arranging their marriage. She respected hard-working, ambitious people, and Ethan seemed to have no interest in becoming either. Her aunt folded her arms. "Grandfather spent his whole life building this family. Then he chose him." The words echoed across the room. Everyone waited for Ethan to respond. Instead, he slowly placed his teacup onto the table. "If speaking about me makes everyone's breakfast more enjoyable," he said with a gentle smile, "then I'm happy to help." For a moment, nobody knew what to say. Then the laughter returned even louder than before. Listen to him. He doesn't even have any pride. Only Ethan understood how meaningless those insults truly were. He had once stood before armies numbering in the millions. He had witnessed civilizations rise and fall. Compared to that, a few cruel words meant absolutely nothing. After breakfast, Elena prepared to leave for an important board meeting with international investors. Winning today's negotiations could completely transform the Ashford Corporation. As she walked toward the front entrance carrying several confidential documents, she noticed Ethan repairing a cracked stone pathway near the garden. She stopped. "You really spend every day doing things like this?" Ethan looked up. "Someone has to. The workers can handle it. They're already busy." She sighed. "You always choose the smallest jobs." He smiled quietly. "No job is small if it helps someone." Elena stared at him for a second. His answer sounded strangely wise. Yet before she could think further, her phone rang. Her executives had arrived. Without another word, she entered the waiting car, which disappeared through the mansion gates. Ethan watched until it vanished from sight. The smile slowly disappeared from his face. Closing his eyes, he stretched out his senses. For ordinary people, the city felt peaceful. For him, something was terribly wrong. A cold wave of dark energy drifted across the skyline before disappearing. Someone powerful had entered Ravenshield. Far beyond the city limits, hidden beneath frozen mountains where no human dared travel, enormous black chains suddenly trembled. Ancient symbols carved into giant stone pillars began losing their golden light. Deep inside an endless underground prison, two crimson eyes slowly opened. A voice older than history echoed through the darkness. "So, after all these centuries, I can finally feel your presence again." Heavy laughter shook the cavern walls. "The son of Odin. You've hidden among humans for far too long." Nearby, shadow-like figures immediately knelt. "Our master." The seal continues weakening. The ancient being slowly rose from a throne carved entirely from black crystal. "Good. The time has finally come. Prepare my followers. This world will soon remember why even the gods feared my name." Meanwhile, back in Ravenshield, Ethan quietly looked toward the distant northern mountains. His calm expression changed for the first time in years. "I can feel you," he whispered softly. "So you finally awakened." A gentle breeze swept across the garden. For everyone else, it was just another peaceful morning. But for the guardian who had spent 5 years hiding among humans, the countdown to the greatest battle of his immortal life had officially begun. Morning sunlight slowly spread across Ravenshield, filling the Ashford estate with warmth and life. Servants hurried through the hallways preparing breakfast. Gardeners trimmed the hedges surrounding the mansion, and expensive cars lined up outside the front gate as executives arrived for another busy day. To outsiders, the Ashford family appeared to have everything: wealth, influence, and a future filled with endless success. Yet hidden beneath that perfect image, an invisible storm was beginning to gather. After Elena left for her business meeting, Ethan quietly finished repairing the stone pathway before washing the dust from his hands. One of the elderly housekeepers approached him carrying a basket filled with groceries. "You've already worked enough this morning," she said kindly. "Please let me carry this." Ethan smiled. "You've been carrying this family on your shoulders for 30 years. Let me carry it today." The old woman laughed softly and handed him the basket. Unlike the Ashford family, the servants had always respected Ethan. They never judged him because of his simple appearance. They only saw a man who treated everyone with kindness, remembered every birthday, helped without being asked, and never expected anything in return. As Ethan entered the kitchen, one of the younger servants whispered to another, "I've never understood why the family treats him so badly." The older servant sighed. "Sometimes people become blind when they only judge what they can see." Meanwhile, nearly 20 miles away, Elena entered the luxurious headquarters of Titan Global Investments. The massive glass building reflected the morning sun, while dozens of reporters stood outside, hoping to capture photographs of the city's most influential business leaders. Today's meeting was critical. If the Ashford Corporation secured the investment, their company would become one of the most powerful organizations in the region. Inside the conference room, executives greeted one another with polite smiles while assistants arranged important contracts across the polished table. Everything appeared perfectly normal. But hidden among the security staff stood a man whose eyes never left Elena. A tiny communication device rested inside his ear. "The target has arrived," he whispered. Far across the city, inside an abandoned warehouse, another man slowly smiled. "Excellent. Begin Phase 1. Back at the Ashford estate, Ethan suddenly stopped walking. The basket slipped slightly in his hand. His expression changed. He had felt it. Danger. Without another second of hesitation, he quietly placed the groceries on a nearby table. "I'll be back soon," he told the confused housekeeper. Before anyone could ask where he was going, Ethan calmly walked toward the front gate. The moment he stepped outside the estate, his entire presence changed. The gentle husband vanished. The guardian awakened. Without drawing attention, he disappeared into the crowded streets with unbelievable speed. Ordinary pedestrians never even noticed the calm man moving effortlessly between them. At the same time, inside Titan Global Investments, the meeting officially began. Elena confidently presented her company's expansion strategy. The investors listened carefully. Several executives nodded with approval. Everything was going exactly as planned. Then suddenly, the lights flickered. Only once. The projector shut down. Every computer screen turned black. Several security cameras inside the building lost power simultaneously. Most people assumed it was a technical problem. Only one man smiled. The disguised assassin quietly left his position near the entrance. He moved toward the emergency stairwell. Inside his jacket rested a suppressed handgun. His orders were simple: eliminate Elena Ashford before the contracts were signed. Outside, Ethan reached the building. He looked toward the upper floors. His divine senses pierced every wall. He immediately found the assassin. "Too late," Ethan whispered. Then, he stepped forward. To everyone watching outside, nothing unusual happened. But inside the building, a sudden gust of wind rushed through the emergency stairwell. The assassin froze. Someone stood between him and the conference room. An ordinary-looking man wearing simple clothes. The assassin frowned. "Move." Ethan remained silent. "I said move." Still, no answer. The assassin reached for his weapon. He never had the chance. Before his fingers touched the pistol, Ethan moved. The hallway seemed to blur. A single precise strike landed against the assassin's wrist. The weapon shattered into dozens of tiny metal fragments before it could even be drawn. The assassin stumbled backward in complete disbelief. "What are you?" Ethan calmly looked into his terrified eyes. "I'm the reason you'll never complete this mission." The assassin pulled a combat knife instead. With a roar, he lunged forward. His blade cut nothing but empty air. Before he could react, Ethan appeared behind him. One gentle strike to the back of his neck. Everything went black. The assassin collapsed unconscious without suffering a single permanent injury. Ethan quietly caught the falling body before it hit the floor. He placed the man against the wall as though he were simply sleeping. No blood, no noise, no witnesses. He then picked up the shattered communication device from the floor. A voice came through the speaker. "Report." Ethan remained silent. "Status." Still, silence. Then he calmly crushed the device in his hand. Miles away inside the abandoned warehouse, sparks exploded from another communicator. The mysterious leader slowly stood. For the first time, his confident smile disappeared. Interesting. He looked toward the city skyline. "So, we're not dealing with ordinary luck." Back upstairs, the meeting continued without interruption. Elena had no idea death had come within a few steps of the conference room. Minutes later, the contracts were signed successfully. The investors applauded. Congratulations filled the room. Everyone celebrated what they believed was another great business victory. Only Ethan knew how close everything had come to disaster. As Elena exited the building surrounded by reporters, she noticed a familiar figure walking away across the street. It looked like Ethan. She blinked. No, he should be at home. When she looked again, the man had disappeared into the crowd. She smiled slightly. I must be imagining things. That evening, the Ashford family celebrated the successful investment deal with an extravagant dinner. Everyone praised Elena for her achievement. One uncle laughed loudly. Our company keeps getting luckier every year. Another cousin raised his glass. Maybe fortune finally decided to bless the Ashford family. Across the table, Ethan quietly continued eating. He neither corrected them, nor accepted any praise. The old housekeeper looked toward him for only a brief moment. She smiled softly. Some heroes never need applause. Far beyond the city, inside the frozen mountains, the enormous crimson eyes slowly closed once more. The ancient being spoke quietly into the darkness. He's protecting them personally. So, the hunt finally begins. 100 shadow warriors immediately knelt. Find the son of Odin. Bring me his weakness. The darkness had made its first move, but neither side realized. The coming war would decide far more than the fate of one family. It would determine the future of both Earth and the heavens themselves. The celebration inside the Ashford estate lasted long into the evening. Crystal chandeliers illuminated the grand dining hall, while laughter echoed through every corner of the mansion. Family members congratulated Elena for securing the historic investment deal, believing their success was the result of intelligence and careful planning. Glasses were raised in celebration, expensive wine flowed freely, and everyone spoke confidently about the bright future awaiting the Ashford Corporation. Only one person remained silent. Ethan sat quietly at the far end of the table, eating his dinner with the same calm expression he wore every day. He neither joined the celebrations nor corrected anyone when they praised their own good fortune. To him, protecting the family had never been about receiving recognition. It was simply a promise he intended to keep until the very end. One of Elena's cousins looked across the table and laughed. Look at him. Even during a celebration, he looks like he has nothing to say. Another relative smirked. Maybe he's wondering how he'll spend the money he never earned. Several people burst into laughter. Elena glanced toward Ethan. For the first time, instead of feeling embarrassed by him, she felt slightly uncomfortable listening to the constant insults. She couldn't explain why, but ever since the mysterious incidents surrounding her recent business trip, something inside her had begun to change. She had started noticing things she had ignored for years. Ethan never argued. He never became angry. He never spoke badly about anyone. Even after endless humiliation, he always remained kind. That level of patience didn't seem normal. After dinner ended, the relatives returned to their rooms while servants cleaned the dining hall. Ethan quietly carried several heavy boxes into the storage room to help the elderly staff before stepping outside into the cool night air. The moon hung high above the estate. Everything appeared peaceful. Then, a cold wind swept across the garden. Ethan slowly raised his head. His eyes focused on the dark forest beyond the estate walls. Someone was watching him. Without making a sound, he calmly walked toward the old oak trees at the edge of the property. The deeper he entered the darkness, the quieter the night became. Even the insects had stopped making noise. Finally, he stopped. "You've followed me long enough," he said calmly. "You can come out." For several seconds, nothing happened. Then a shadow stepped out from behind a tree. The figure wore a long black cloak, hiding its face beneath a hood. Instead of attacking, the stranger slowly knelt on one knee. "My lord." Ethan recognized the voice immediately. "Lorien." The young man lowered his head respectfully. "It has been many years." Lorien was no ordinary human. He was one of Asgard's celestial scouts, a warrior responsible for watching the borders between heaven and earth. "What brings you here?" Ethan asked. Lorien's expression grew serious. "The northern seal has weakened again." Ethan remained silent. "The Council of Asgard is deeply concerned. The Shadow Emperor is gathering followers. They fear he may break free sooner than expected." Ethan looked toward the distant northern mountains. "I already felt it." Lorien hesitated before continuing. "The All-Father wishes for your return. My vow isn't finished. We know. But heaven grows weaker each day without its greatest guardian." For a brief moment, Ethan closed his eyes. He had served Asgard for thousands of years. He had fought wars no human could imagine. Yet this simple promise to protect one family had become one of the most meaningful missions of his immortal life. "I gave my word," he finally said, "and I will not break it." Lorien slowly nodded. "I expected that answer." He reached into his cloak and removed a small golden pendant shaped like a wolf. "If the final battle begins before your vow ends, break this." Ethan accepted the pendant. "What will happen?" "The gates of Asgard will open. The heavenly guard will come." With that, Lorien's body dissolved into thousands of golden particles before disappearing completely. The forest became silent once again. Ethan looked down at the pendant resting in his hand. "I hope I never need this." At that very moment, nearly 50 miles away, inside an abandoned cathedral hidden beneath the mountains, a circle of black-robed figures gathered around a massive stone altar. Dark flames burned with unnatural colors. At the center stood the mysterious leader whose voice echoed through the chamber. "Our spies have confirmed it. The son of Odin still lives among humans." One follower stepped forward. "My lord, should we attack him directly?" The leader slowly shook his head. "No. He defeated entire armies long before your ancestors were born. Force alone will never defeat him." Another follower asked quietly, "Then how do we win?" The leader smiled. "We don't attack the warrior. We attack his heart." He waved his hand. A magical image appeared above the altar. It showed Elena standing outside the Ashford headquarters. The followers smiled cruelly. "So that's his weakness." The leader nodded. "Every guardian has something worth protecting. And once that protection becomes fear, even gods can fall." Back in Ravenshield, Elena stood alone on the balcony outside her bedroom. The city lights stretched endlessly across the horizon. She couldn't stop thinking about Ethan. Earlier that evening, when everyone laughed, he hadn't shown even the slightest anger. How could someone remain so calm? She remembered every moment over the past 5 years. Every family dinner, every insult, every time she had ignored him. A strange feeling settled in her heart. For the first time, she wondered if she had completely misunderstood the man she married. Inside his small room on the opposite side of the mansion, Ethan quietly stood before the window. The golden pendant rested in his hand. He looked toward the northern mountains once more. Far beyond the city, a faint crimson light briefly appeared against the night sky. The enemy had already begun moving. And deep inside, for the first time in centuries, the son of Odin felt something he had almost forgotten. Not fear for himself, but fear for the people he had sworn to protect. Outside the mansion walls, hidden among the trees, 2 glowing red eyes silently watched the estate. A cold whisper echoed through the darkness. The countdown has begun, and somewhere beneath the frozen mountains, the Shadow Emperor slowly opened his eyes and smiled. Soon, the son of Odin will make a choice that will change both heaven and earth forever. The following morning, an uneasy silence settled over Ravenshield. Thick gray clouds covered the sky, blocking the sunlight that usually filled the city with warmth. Although people continued with their daily routines, many couldn't explain why the atmosphere felt unusually heavy. Birds that normally filled the parks with cheerful songs had disappeared, and even the wind carried an unnatural chill. Standing alone in the Ashford Estate's courtyard, Ethan quietly looked toward the horizon. His sharp senses immediately noticed something others could not. A wave of dark energy had entered the city during the night. It wasn't strong enough for ordinary humans to feel, but to him, it was as obvious as thunder before a storm. Behind him, the mansion doors opened. Elena walked outside wearing a navy blue business suit, holding a folder filled with company documents. She had barely slept after thinking about everything that had happened during the past few days. Somehow, every dangerous situation ended with an unknown protector appearing at exactly the right moment. As she reached her car, Ethan spoke softly. "Be careful today." She stopped. She turned and looked at him. "You've said that before." He smiled gently. "Sometimes caution is worth more than confidence." She hesitated before asking, "Do you feel something is wrong?" For a brief moment, Ethan remained silent. Then he simply nodded. "I hope I'm mistaken." Before she could ask another question, one of the executives called her from inside the vehicle. "The board is waiting." She looked back at Ethan one last time before getting into the car. As the convoy drove away, Ethan's calm smile slowly disappeared. He whispered under his breath, "I pray I'm not too late." Across the city, inside an abandoned underground chamber, dozens of black-robed followers stood in complete silence. At the center of the room stood the Shadow Emperor's high priest. Floating above his hands was a magical image of Blackstone Tower, where Elena's company would hold its emergency shareholders meeting later that afternoon. The priest smiled. The son of Odin has protected them from ordinary men. He slowly closed his hand. Today, he will face something far worse. The followers bowed together. "What are your orders, master?" "The tower itself will become our prison." Meanwhile, Ethan quietly left the Ashford estate. Instead of taking a vehicle, he simply walked through the crowded streets. To everyone around him, he looked like an ordinary man enjoying a peaceful morning. No one noticed that he was silently scanning every building, every rooftop, and every moving vehicle. Halfway through the city, he suddenly stopped. Standing beside a small bridge was a blind street musician playing an old violin. The melody was beautiful, but hidden inside it was an ancient heavenly signal. Ethan slowly approached. Without stopping the music, the old musician whispered, The gates between worlds continue weakening. Ethan recognized the voice. It was another celestial messenger disguised as a human. The council sent you? The musician nodded slightly. The Shadow Emperor has awakened 3 dark generals. Ethan's expression hardened. So soon? They're searching for you. I expected that. The old man continued playing. The problem isn't you. It's the woman. Ethan remained silent. If they cannot defeat heaven's greatest warrior, they'll destroy everything he refuses to abandon. The music suddenly stopped. When Ethan looked again, the old musician had completely disappeared. Only the violin remained on the empty bench. Hours later, Blackstone Tower stood proudly over the city skyline. Inside, hundreds of executives, investors, lawyers, and journalists gathered for one of the most important business meetings in the company's history. Elena confidently stepped onto the presentation stage. Everything appeared normal. Security guards watched every entrance. Luxury cameras recorded every speech. The media waited eagerly, but hidden among the guests. 3 strangers quietly entered the ballroom. Each wore expensive suits. Each carried no visible weapons. Each possessed glowing crimson eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses. They were not human. They were the first of the Shadow Emperor's dark generals. One smiled. The Guardian has not arrived. Another replied, he will. The woman guarantees it. At exactly 12 o'clock, every digital clock inside Blackstone Tower stopped. 12 o'clock. The lights flickered once, then twice. Suddenly, every elevator froze. Every security camera went offline. Every emergency exit locked automatically. Confused voices spread throughout the building. What happened? Why aren't the doors opening? The generators should have started already. Within seconds, the windows turned completely black. Not because of darkness, but because thick black mist surrounded the entire skyscraper. Outside, thousands of pedestrians stopped in shock. Black clouds circled the tower like a giant storm. Police vehicles arrived within minutes. Yet none of them could even approach the entrance. An invisible force pushed every vehicle backward. Panic spread rapidly across the city. Several streets away, Ethan slowly lifted his eyes. He saw the black mist surrounding Blackstone Tower. His expression changed immediately. They've begun. Without another moment of hesitation, he stepped forward. A powerful gust of wind exploded around him. To ordinary people, he simply vanished into the crowded streets. No one realized that the quiet husband everyone mocked every day was now moving faster than the human eye could follow. Inside the tower, the temperature dropped sharply. Guests hugged themselves as freezing air filled the ballroom. Then, one by one, the 3 mysterious businessmen removed their sunglasses. Their eyes burned like crimson fire. The crowd froze in terror. One woman screamed, What are you?" The tallest general smiled coldly. "We are the beginning of humanity's end." As darkness spread across the hall, the elevator doors suddenly exploded open. A calm pair of footsteps echoed through the silent building. Every dark general slowly turned toward the entrance. Standing alone beneath the broken lights was Ethan. His simple clothes hadn't changed. His face remained calm. His eyes held no fear. The tallest general smiled. "So, the son of Odin finally arrives." Ethan looked directly at the 3 monsters. His voice was steady. "You've frightened enough innocent people. I'm ending this here." The 3 dark generals laughed together. Outside, thunder shook the sky. Inside Blackstone Tower, the first battle between Heaven's Guardian and the Shadow Emperor's elite warriors was finally about to begin. The shattered windows of Blackstone Tower trembled as thunder rolled across the sky. A thick curtain of black mist surrounded the building, cutting it off from the rest of Ravenshield. Inside the grand conference hall, hundreds of executives, investors, and employees stood frozen in fear, unable to understand the nightmare unfolding before their eyes. The emergency exits refused to open, communication systems were completely dead, and every security camera had turned black. It was as though the tower had been pulled into another world where ordinary rules no longer existed. Standing in the center of the hall, Ethan faced the 3 dark generals without the slightest sign of fear. His plain shirt and simple trousers made him look completely ordinary, yet the calm confidence in his eyes made even the terrifying warriors hesitate. The tallest general slowly stepped forward. His crimson eyes glowed brighter with every step, and black energy twisted around his body like living smoke. "So," he said with a cold smile. The legendary son of Odin hides behind the face of a powerless human. Ethan remained silent. I expected someone wearing divine armor. The second general laughed. Instead, heaven sends us a servant. The third general cracked his neck and stretched his fingers. This will be easier than we imagined. Several frightened employees looked toward Ethan with confusion. To them, he was simply an ordinary man who had somehow walked into the middle of an impossible situation. None of them understood why the monsters seemed to recognize him. Elena stared at Ethan in complete disbelief. Ethan, her voice barely escaped her lips. What are you doing here? Without looking back, Ethan answered quietly. I came to take you home. His calm reply made her even more confused. The tallest general suddenly burst into laughter. How touching. You still pretended to be human. He slowly raised one hand. The black mist surrounding his arm formed dozens of razor-sharp blades. Let's see how long your kindness survives. Without warning, the blades shot across the room. Several employees screamed. Before anyone could react, Ethan lifted one hand. A brilliant golden light flashed across the hall. Every shadow blade shattered into glowing dust before reaching a single innocent person. Silence filled the room. The executives stared with wide eyes. The dark generals stopped smiling. For the first time, they realized the stories about the son of Odin were true. Ethan slowly lowered his hand. I gave you one chance to leave. You refused. Now this ends. The three generals attacked together. The marble floor exploded beneath their feet as they rushed forward with incredible speed. To ordinary eyes, they disappeared. Only flashes of black energy remained. Yet Ethan never moved. The instant the first general reached him, Ethan stepped slightly to the side. The attack missed completely. Using only 2 fingers, Ethan struck the warrior's wrist. A deafening crack echoed through the hall. The general was thrown backward like a cannonball, crashing through 3 concrete pillars before finally stopping against a steel wall. The second general roared and unleashed a wave of black fire. The flames consumed half the ballroom. Guests screamed and covered their faces. Then, a circle of golden light surrounded Ethan. The black flames disappeared the moment they touched the glowing barrier. Not even the heat remained. The third general attempted to strike from behind. His claws were only inches from Ethan's back. Without turning around, Ethan caught the attack with one hand. The monster's eyes widened. Impossible. Ethan calmly tightened his grip. The general dropped to one knee as unbearable pressure crushed his arm. I spent thousands of years protecting worlds, Ethan said quietly. You truly believe creatures like you can surprise me? With one effortless motion, Ethan threw him across the ballroom. The massive warrior smashed through the conference stage before collapsing beneath broken steel beams. The remaining employees could only stare. No one dared speak. Everything they believed about reality had just been destroyed. Elena stood frozen. She remembered every moment she had doubted him. Every cruel word spoken by her family. Every time she believed he had no purpose. Now, the quiet man everyone mocked was standing alone against monsters that ordinary weapons couldn't even harm. Outside the tower, dark clouds continued growing larger. Far beneath the frozen mountains, the Shadow Emperor watched the battle through a magical portal. His expression remained calm. So, the Guardian still hides most of his strength. He slowly smiled. Excellent. A hooded servant stepped beside him. My lord, shall we send more warriors? The Shadow Emperor shook his head. No, this battle was never meant to defeat him. It was only meant to measure him. The servant looked confused. What did you discover? The Shadow Emperor's smile widened. He protects humans before himself. He still carries mercy. And mercy is the greatest weakness any warrior can possess. Back inside Blackstone Tower, the tallest general slowly climbed out from the shattered concrete. Blood dripped from the corner of his mouth, yet he began laughing louder than before. You've become softer, son of Odin. If this battle had happened centuries ago, you would have killed us already. Ethan looked at him silently. I don't kill those who can still choose another path. The general laughed even harder. Then humanity has already changed you. Suddenly, the monster slammed both hands onto the floor. Dark energy spread across the building like poisonous roots. The entire tower shook violently. Large cracks raced through the walls. Concrete began falling from the ceiling. Panic erupted once again. The tower is collapsing. Run! We're trapped. Ethan immediately looked upward. If the building fell, hundreds of innocent people would die. The Dark General smiled. They had achieved exactly what they wanted. For the first time during the battle, Ethan faced an impossible choice. Continue fighting, or save the people. Without hesitation, he chose the innocent. Golden light exploded from his body, illuminating the entire skyscraper. He raised both hands toward the collapsing ceiling. Thousands of falling tons of steel and concrete suddenly stopped in midair. Every person inside looked upward in disbelief. The entire building was being held together by one man. The three Dark Generals exchanged satisfied smiles. Their mission had succeeded. While Ethan used nearly all his power protecting innocent lives, they quietly disappeared into the black mist surrounding the tower. Standing beneath the collapsing roof, Ethan watched them escape but made no attempt to follow. Saving lives mattered more than revenge. Outside, rescue teams watched in complete shock as golden light poured from every floor of Blackstone Tower. None of them understood what they were witnessing, but everyone knew one thing. Somewhere inside that building, a miracle was happening. Golden light continued shining from Blackstone Tower as thousands of frightened people rushed toward the emergency exits. Rescue teams, firefighters, and police officers surrounded the building, unable to explain what had just happened. News helicopters circled above the city, broadcasting live footage of the mysterious disaster. Reporters spoke of a possible terrorist attack, while others believed a powerful earthquake had struck the tower. No one could understand why the building, which should have collapsed completely, was still standing. Inside the shattered conference hall, Ethan remained motionless. His hands were raised toward the broken ceiling, holding thousands of tons of steel and concrete together through sheer divine strength. Every second drained more of his energy, yet his expression never changed. The safety of innocent lives mattered far more than his own exhaustion. Everyone moved toward the emergency staircase. One firefighter shouted as rescue crews finally reached the upper floors. People hurried past Ethan without fully understanding what they had witnessed. Some believed the golden light was part of the building's emergency system. Others were too frightened to think clearly. But a few employees looked back one last time before leaving. They would never forget the quiet man who had stood alone beneath a collapsing skyscraper. Elena was among the last to leave. She refused to move. Instead, she stared at Ethan with tears slowly filling her eyes. "Who are you?" she whispered. Ethan finally looked at her. The warmth in his eyes hadn't changed. "I'm still the same man who promised to protect you. But none of this is possible." He smiled gently. Some truths reveal themselves only when the time is right. Before Elena could ask another question, another violent tremor shook the tower. Large cracks spread across the ceiling. "Ethan," he calmly nodded. "Go. I'll be right behind you." Although every instinct told her to stay, the rescue workers pulled Elena toward the emergency exit. She kept looking back until Ethan disappeared behind falling dust. The moment the final civilian escaped the building, Ethan slowly lowered his hands. The golden light faded. With one controlled movement, he released the remaining energy into the tower's support columns. A deep rumble echoed throughout the structure before everything became still. Blackstone Tower had survived. Outside, thousands of people burst into applause, believing rescue engineers had somehow prevented the collapse. Only Ethan quietly walked away through the crowd before anyone noticed him. He preferred remaining invisible. Heroes did not always need to be recognized. That night, heavy rain covered Ravenshield. Inside the Ashford estate, the family watched the news together. Every television channel reported the same incredible story. Blackstone Tower miraculously survives structural collapse. Experts argued endlessly. Some claimed hidden support systems had saved the building. Others insisted the event defied science. Nobody spoke of golden light. Nobody mentioned Ethan. Several relatives shook their heads. What unbelievable luck. The Ashford family escaped another disaster. One uncle laughed. "We should celebrate again." Ethan quietly walked into the room, carrying a tray of tea. No one even noticed him. Elena did. Their eyes met for only a second. Something inside her had completely changed. For the first time since their marriage, she wanted answers. Later that evening, Ethan quietly left the mansion and walked toward the old forest outside the city. Rain continued falling. Lightning illuminated the sky. As he reached the center of the forest, 12 enormous stone pillars suddenly began glowing with ancient golden symbols. A circular gateway slowly appeared between the trees. Brilliant light poured from the portal. Moments later, 3 armored warriors stepped through. Their silver armor reflected the golden light surrounding them, while long blue cloaks flowed behind their backs. Each warrior carried a spear engraved with glowing runes. The leader removed his helmet and bowed respectfully. "My lord." Ethan nodded. "Commander Tyr." The commander looked concerned. "The All-Father has summoned you. My mission isn't complete. The situation has changed." The commander raised his hand. A glowing image appeared above the ground. It showed enormous cracks spreading across the frozen mountains far beyond the north. Behind those cracks, something moved. Something enormous. "The Shadow Emperor grows stronger every day," Tyr explained. "The heavenly seal is weakening much faster than expected." Another warrior stepped forward. "If the seal breaks completely, every realm will fall into war." Ethan remained silent. "I know." Tyr looked directly into his eyes. "Asgard needs its greatest warrior." Ethan slowly closed his eyes. "I made a promise, and I will honor it." The commander sighed. "Even now, you continue choosing humanity." Ethan smiled faintly. "I was created to protect life, not abandon it." For several moments, nobody spoke. Finally, Tyr reached into a small chest carried by one of the soldiers. Inside rested an ancient weapon wrapped in blue cloth. He carefully uncovered it. A magnificent sword appeared. Its silver blade shimmered with countless golden runes, while the hilt bore the symbol of a wolf beneath a crown. "This is Stormfang," Tyr said quietly. "The sword forged by Odin himself. It belongs to you." Ethan looked at the legendary weapon. "I left it behind long ago. The All-Father wishes you to carry it once again." Slowly, Ethan reached forward. The instant his fingers touched the hilt, the entire forest shook. Golden lightning exploded across the sky. Every rune on the blade burst into brilliant light. Miles away, people across Ravenshield looked toward the mountains in shock as a pillar of golden light briefly pierced the clouds. Inside the frozen prison beneath the northern mountains, the Shadow Emperor suddenly stood from his throne. His crimson eyes narrowed. "So, you've accepted your sword again." A cruel smile spread across his face. "Excellent. Now the real game begins." Back in the forest, Ethan held Stormfang for the first time in 5 years. Memories flooded his mind. Ancient wars, lost friends, victories, sacrifices, and one promise. A promise made to an old man who had trusted a stranger with his family's future. Ethan slowly sheathed the sword across his back. "I will finish what I started." Commander Tyr smiled proudly. "Then may the blessings of Odin guide your path." The golden gateway slowly began closing. Before disappearing, Tyr spoke one final sentence. "The day is coming when the world will finally learn the true meaning of the title, Son of Odin." As the portal vanished into the night, Ethan turned toward Ravenshield. He could already feel another darkness approaching. The battle at Blackstone Tower had only been the beginning. A far greater enemy was already moving toward the city. And this time, the Shadow Emperor would not send servants. He was coming himself. A cold silence settled over Ravenshield after the mysterious incident at Blackstone Tower. Although the city had returned to its normal routine, nothing truly felt the same. News stations continued broadcasting theories about the unexplained disaster. Scientists searched for logical answers, and social media, filled with videos showing flashes of golden light escaping from the tower moments before the collapse had stopped. Most people dismissed them as edited recordings, but a few believed something extraordinary had happened. At the Ashford estate, however, another kind of silence had begun. Elena couldn't stop thinking about Ethan. Every memory from the last 5 years replayed in her mind. She remembered every family dinner where he had been mocked, every moment he had quietly accepted insults without defending himself, and every time she had walked away believing he was weak. But now, after seeing him inside Blackstone Tower, those memories felt completely different. Who was the man she had married? That question echoed through her mind day and night. The next morning, she woke earlier than usual and walked into the garden. As expected, Ethan was already there, watering the flowers beneath the rising sun. To anyone else, he looked exactly the same as always. A simple man wearing plain clothes, smiling peacefully while caring for the plants. For several moments, Elena simply watched him. "You saved everyone," she finally said. Ethan looked up. I only helped where I could. Don't do that. He looked confused. Do what? Hide the truth. Their eyes met. I saw what happened. You stopped an entire building from collapsing. You fought those creatures. She took a slow breath. Tell me who you really are. For a long moment, Ethan remained silent. Then he smiled gently. If I told you today, you wouldn't believe the whole story. Elena lowered her head. I already believe the impossible. Before Ethan could answer, a black luxury car suddenly entered the estate. 3 men wearing dark suits stepped out and approached the mansion. They carried official documents bearing the seal of the National Security Council. One of them spoke firmly. Miss Elena Ashford? Yes. We need you to come with us. Elena frowned. What happened? The incident at Blackstone Tower. We have several questions. She glanced at Ethan before leaving with the investigators. As the car disappeared through the gates, Ethan's expression grew serious. They're moving faster than I expected. Far beneath the frozen mountains, the enormous underground prison shook violently. Massive chains snapped one after another, echoing through the endless darkness like thunder. Ancient runes carved into the walls faded into dust. The Shadow Emperor slowly rose from his obsidian throne. Unlike before, he no longer appeared as a shadow. His true form was beginning to return. He stood nearly 8 feet tall, wearing black armor that seemed to absorb every ray of light around it. Crimson cracks glowed beneath the armor like molten lava, and his silver hair flowed behind him as if moved by an invisible storm. The dark generals knelt immediately. My emperor, the northern seal has almost fallen. The Shadow Emperor slowly extended one hand. A sphere of black energy appeared above his palm. Inside it, the entire city of Ravenshield became visible. So, the son of Odin has chosen humanity over heaven. He smiled. Then humanity shall become his greatest weakness. One of the generals asked quietly, What are your orders? The Shadow Emperor looked toward the image of the Ashford estate. Prepare the eclipse ritual. The general hesitated. My lord, that spell has been forbidden for thousands of years. I know. It will force him to reveal every ounce of his divine power. And once he does, the gates of Asgard will open. A cruel smile spread across his face. Exactly as I planned. Meanwhile, inside a heavily guarded government facility, Elena sat across from 2 investigators. Large screens displayed security footage from Blackstone Tower. Every camera had failed during the attack. Every recording ended in static. Except one. A damaged emergency camera had captured only a few seconds before shutting down. The investigator pressed play. The screen flickered. A blurry golden figure appeared inside the hallway. Although the image lacked detail, one thing was unmistakable. The figure looked exactly like Ethan. The investigator paused the video. Do you know this man? Elena hesitated. He's my husband. The room became completely silent. The older investigator slowly leaned back. We've searched every national database. No military record. No criminal record. No employment history before 5 years ago. It's as though he never existed. Elena felt her heartbeat quicken. What does that mean? The investigator closed the folder. It means your husband is hiding something. That evening, dark clouds gathered over Ravenshield once again. Ethan stood alone on the rooftop of the Ashford estate, looking toward the northern horizon. Suddenly, a familiar voice echoed behind him. You've been busy. Ethan turned. Standing only a few feet away was an elderly man wearing a long gray cloak and carrying a wooden staff carved with glowing runes. Unlike Commander Tyr, this visitor radiated quiet wisdom rather than overwhelming strength. Ethan immediately bowed his head. Master Eirik. The old man smiled warmly. You still remember your teacher. How could I forget? Eirik slowly walked to the edge of the rooftop. The Shadow Emperor has escaped the first prison. I know. He'll come himself next. The old sage nodded. And when he does, you will not defeat him alone. Ethan looked surprised. I've faced him before. Yes. And you nearly died. Silence followed. Eirik looked toward the stars. The prophecy has begun. What prophecy? The one Odin never wanted you to hear. The old man touched Ethan's shoulder. There is another. Another. Son of Odin. Eirik nodded slowly. Not by blood. By destiny. Before Ethan could ask another question, the old sage dissolved into countless particles of light that drifted into the night sky. He had vanished. Ethan stood alone beneath the stars, repeating the old man's words. Another chosen by destiny. Far away, beyond the frozen mountains, a bolt of black lightning split the heavens. The Shadow Emperor looked toward Ravenshield and slowly raised his hand. The time for hiding is over. Across the entire city, every streetlight suddenly went dark. Children stopped playing. Animals fled into the forests. The wind carried a voice that seemed to come from every direction at once. Son of Odin, come and face me. Ethan slowly closed his eyes. The final war had finally begun. The strange darkness that swallowed Ravenshield lasted for only a few seconds, yet it was enough to leave millions of people in fear. Every streetlight in the city had gone dark at the exact same moment. Traffic signals stopped working, and every electronic device briefly lost power. When the lights finally returned, people looked around in confusion, believing it was nothing more than an unusual blackout. But those with sharp instincts felt something far more disturbing. The air itself had changed, carrying an ancient presence that seemed to whisper through the wind. Standing on the rooftop of the Ashford estate, Ethan slowly opened his eyes. He recognized the voice immediately. The Shadow Emperor had crossed into the mortal world. For the first time in thousands of years, the ancient ruler no longer hid behind servants or magical projections. He had arrived personally. Far beyond the city, hidden among the frozen mountains, enormous pillars of black fire erupted into the sky. Ancient temples buried beneath ice collapsed one after another as the last fragments of the heavenly seal shattered into dust. The prison that had held the Shadow Emperor for centuries no longer existed. Inside the ruins, countless creatures emerged from the darkness. Some possessed enormous wings covered with black flames. Others resembled armored giants carrying weapons forged from obsidian. Behind them marched thousands of shadow soldiers whose glowing crimson eyes illuminated the frozen valley. The Shadow Army had awakened. At the front of the army stood the Shadow Emperor himself. His black armor reflected no light, making him appear like a living void surrounded by crimson lightning. Every step he took caused the frozen earth beneath him to crack. He slowly looked toward Ravenshield. So, the world still belongs to humanity. A cruel smile appeared on his face. Not for much longer. He raised one hand. The entire Shadow Army knelt instantly. My Emperor, the Shadow Emperor pointed toward the distant city. March. Within seconds, thousands of warriors disappeared into portals made of living darkness. The invasion had begun. Back at the Ashford estate, Ethan immediately sensed the portals opening across the country. He quietly entered the mansion. Inside, the Ashford family gathered around the television, watching breaking news. Every major city had reported mysterious disappearances. Entire villages had lost communication. Military aircraft had vanished from radar. Governments declared a nationwide emergency. The news anchors struggled to remain calm. We are receiving reports of unexplained storms appearing across multiple regions. Citizens are advised to remain indoors. Before the broadcast could continue, every television screen suddenly turned black. A single face appeared, the Shadow Emperor. His crimson eyes stared directly into millions of homes around the world. My name has been forgotten. His deep voice echoed through every speaker. But long before your history began, I ruled this world. People watched in absolute silence. I have returned to reclaim what was stolen. He slowly smiled. Do not resist. It will only delay the inevitable. The broadcast ended. Every television exploded into static. Silence filled the Ashford mansion. One cousin nervously laughed. It has to be some kind of cyber attack. No one answered. They had all seen the same terrifying face. Later that night, military helicopters flew across the city while emergency sirens echoed through every street. The government announced a complete lockdown. Citizens rushed home as fear spread everywhere. Meanwhile, Ethan quietly stood inside the mansion's old chapel. Hidden beneath the floor was an ancient stone chamber that no member of the Ashford family knew existed. He slowly knelt before a weathered stone altar. Upon it rested a small wooden box. Carefully opening it, Ethan revealed an old silver ring engraved with the symbol of a raven. It was the final gift Odin had given him before sending him to Earth. As Ethan placed the ring onto his finger, the chamber filled with brilliant golden light. Ancient runes appeared across the walls. A familiar voice echoed around him. My son. Ethan immediately recognized it. Odin, the voice continued, you have honored your promise. You protected those entrusted to you. But the final battle approaches. The light surrounding the altar slowly formed the image of the All-Father himself. His long white beard flowed gently, and his single eye carried endless wisdom. You cannot defeat the Shadow Emperor through strength alone. Ethan lowered his head. Then show me another path. Odin smiled. The answer has always been within your heart. The greatest power is not the sword. It is the people you choose to protect. The vision slowly faded. Before disappearing completely, Odin spoke one final sentence. When the blood moon rises, remember who you truly are. The chamber returned to silence. Outside the mansion, Elena had unknowingly followed Ethan. She watched from the doorway as the golden light disappeared. Although she hadn't heard every word, she had seen enough. Her husband was connected to something far beyond the human world. She quietly stepped backward before Ethan noticed her. For the first time in her life, she realized she had never truly known the man standing beside her for 5 years. At midnight, the sky suddenly turned crimson. A massive blood moon slowly rose above Ravenshield. People across the city stepped outside in fear. Children cried. Animals howled. The air became heavy. Then, without warning, hundreds of portals opened across the skyline. Dark creatures poured into the streets. Buildings shook as monstrous giants landed among the skyscrapers. Military forces immediately opened fire. Bullets passed harmlessly through the creatures. Entire battalions were forced to retreat. Panic spread within minutes. The invasion had begun. Standing atop the tallest building in the city, the Shadow Emperor watched everything with satisfaction. His voice echoed across the heavens. Son of Odin, I know you're here. I've waited thousands of years for this moment. Golden lightning suddenly split the crimson sky. On the roof of another skyscraper, Ethan appeared with Stormfang resting in his right hand. His simple clothes were gone. For the first time since leaving Asgard, he wore his celestial battle armor. Silver plates engraved with glowing runes covered his body, while a deep blue cloak flowed behind him in the powerful wind. Stormfang blazed with golden lightning. The Shadow Emperor smiled. There you are. The two ancient rivals stared at each other across the city skyline. Neither moved. Neither spoke. They both understood that once this battle began, the fate of humanity would never be the same again. Above them, the blood moon shone brighter than ever, and beneath its crimson light, the greatest battle in history was finally about to begin. The blood moon hung over Ravenshield like a crimson eye watching the end of an age. Lightning ripped across the dark heavens while thousands of shadow creatures flooded the streets below. Towering buildings burned. Emergency sirens echoed through every district, and frightened civilians desperately searched for safety. The once peaceful city had become a battlefield unlike anything humanity had ever witnessed. High above the chaos, on opposite rooftops, two ancient warriors stood facing each other. On one side stood Ethan, the legendary son of Odin, dressed in celestial silver armor. Golden runes glowed across his chest as Stormfang rested firmly in his hand. Lightning danced around the divine blade, illuminating the darkness with flashes of gold. On the other side stood the Shadow Emperor, surrounded by swirling darkness that swallowed every ray of light. His black armor pulsed with crimson energy, and his presence alone caused nearby skyscrapers to tremble. For several long moments, neither warrior moved. The wind carried only silence. Finally, the Shadow Emperor smiled. Thousands of years. I've waited thousands of years for this battle. Ethan tightened his grip on Stormfang. I imprisoned you once. I'll do it again. The Shadow Emperor laughed. You imprisoned only my body. But while I slept, humanity became weak. He slowly looked down at the burning city. They fear one another. They fight for wealth. They betray their own families. They've already embraced darkness. They simply haven't realized it yet. Ethan remained calm. As long as even one innocent soul refuses to surrender, there is still hope. The Shadow Emperor's smile disappeared. Then show me. Without warning, he vanished. A deafening explosion echoed across the skyline. Ethan barely raised Stormfang in time. Clang. The collision shook the entire city. Golden lightning and black flames exploded in every direction. The shockwave shattered windows across dozens of nearby buildings. People hundreds of meters away were thrown to the ground. The first strike had nearly split the skyscraper beneath them. The Shadow Emperor attacked again. His sword moved faster than lightning. One strike. 2. 5. 10. The sky filled with flashes of gold and crimson as the two immortals exchanged blows at impossible speed. Neither gained the advantage. Every collision created another explosion that echoed across the heavens. Far below, civilians looked upward in disbelief. Some dropped to their knees. Others whispered prayers. They had never imagined such beings could exist. Meanwhile, inside the Ashford estate, Elena watched everything unfold from the mansion balcony. She could see golden flashes illuminating the distant skyline. Although she couldn't make out every detail, one thing was certain. Ethan was fighting. Alone. Her heart raced. Without thinking, she ran toward her car. One of her uncles grabbed her arm. "Where are you going?" She pulled free. "To help my husband." The relatives stared at her in disbelief. "That's impossible. You'll die." Tears filled her eyes. "Maybe. But he spent 5 years protecting me. It's my turn not to abandon him." She climbed into the car and sped toward downtown Ravenshield. For the first time, she wasn't running from danger. She was running toward the man she finally understood. Back on the battlefield, the Shadow Emperor suddenly slammed both hands against the rooftop. Black energy spread through the entire building. The massive skyscraper began collapsing beneath Ethan's feet. Concrete exploded. Steel beams twisted apart. The building leaned dangerously toward the city streets below. Thousands of civilians screamed. Ethan looked down. If the tower fell, entire neighborhoods would be destroyed. The Shadow Emperor smiled. "You see, you still make the same mistake. You always choose others before yourself." Without hesitation, Ethan thrust Stormfang into the rooftop. Golden light erupted from the blade. The collapsing skyscraper stopped moving. Every falling piece of concrete froze in midair. The entire structure was held together by divine energy. But using so much power left Ethan exposed. The Shadow Emperor appeared behind him instantly. A massive blast of darkness struck Ethan directly across the back. The force launched him through 3 neighboring buildings before he crashed into the rooftop of an abandoned hotel. Stormfang slid across the concrete. For the first time, blood appeared on Ethan's armor. The Shadow Emperor slowly floated toward him. So, even gods can bleed. Ethan slowly stood. Pain shot through his body. His armor had cracked. Golden light escaped through the damaged runes. Yet despite his injuries, he smiled. The Shadow Emperor frowned. "Why are you smiling?" Ethan looked toward the streets below. The skyscraper still stood. The civilians had escaped. "Because I saved them." The Shadow Emperor roared in frustration. "You fool." He unleashed countless spears made of darkness. Hundreds of deadly projectiles filled the sky. Ethan raised Stormfang. Golden lightning exploded around him. The sword moved faster than sight itself. Every spear shattered into glowing fragments before reaching him. The heavens shook once again. Far beyond Earth, the gates of Asgard slowly opened. Thousands of celestial warriors gathered upon the golden walls. Commander Tyr stood beside the great gates. The prophecy unfolds. Beside him stood Odin himself. The All-Father watched the battle in complete silence. One young warrior asked nervously, "Should we intervene?" Odin slowly shook his head. "Not yet. The final choice belongs to my son." Back in Ravenshield, Elena finally reached downtown. The streets were filled with frightened civilians fleeing from shadow creatures. Without hesitation, she helped guide children toward emergency shelters. An elderly woman stumbled while trying to escape. Elena immediately lifted her to safety. Across the street, a frightened little boy stood frozen as a shadow beast approached. Without thinking, Elena ran toward him. The creature raised its enormous claw. The child closed his eyes. Just before the attack landed, a bolt of golden lightning struck the ground. The monster was thrown backward. Ethan landed between the beast and the civilians. He turned only briefly. "Take them somewhere safe." Elena nodded. "I will." For the first time in 5 years. They smiled at each other. No words were needed. They finally understood one another. High above them, the Shadow Emperor watched quietly. Then, he began laughing. "Excellent. This is exactly what I wanted." He slowly raised both hands toward the blood moon. The crimson moon began turning completely black. Dark energy poured from the heavens into his body. His armor transformed. Gigantic wings made of living shadows spread across the sky. The ground shook violently. Every shadow creature stopped fighting and knelt before him. The Shadow Emperor's voice echoed across the entire world. "Behold, my true form." Ethan looked upward. For the first time in centuries, even he realized the final battle would demand everything he possessed. Stormfang began glowing brighter than ever before. The runes on Ethan's armor ignited with divine light. Above the clouds, Odin slowly stood. The hour has come. The heavens opened. Golden thunder roared across creation. The fate of humanity would be decided. In the final battle, golden thunder roared across the heavens as enormous gates of light slowly opened above Raven's shield. The clouds split apart, revealing the magnificent skyline of Asgard for the first time in thousands of years. Celestial horns echoed across the sky while countless warriors in shining armor assembled behind the golden gates. Their weapons radiated divine energy, and banners bearing the symbol of Odin fluttered through the heavens. Every human below looked upward in complete disbelief. Some believed they were witnessing the end of the world. Others fell to their knees in prayer. Standing in the center of the ruined city, Ethan slowly raised Stormfang toward the heavens. The sword responded immediately, releasing a pillar of golden light that stretched from Earth to Asgard itself. The Shadow Emperor laughed as darkness continued spreading across the blood moon. "So this is your final stand. You've called heaven itself." Ethan remained calm. "I didn't call them. They came because humanity is worth protecting." The Shadow Emperor's crimson eyes narrowed. "Then let heaven watch your defeat." With an earth-shaking roar, he unleashed every ounce of his power. The black wings behind him expanded until they covered the entire sky. Dark lightning rained across the city. Shadow creatures multiplied by the thousands. Every street became another battlefield. Commander Tyr looked toward Odin. "My king, give the order." Odin slowly stood from his throne. "The time has come." He raised his legendary spear. The heavenly gates opened completely. "Warriors of Asgard, protect the innocent." Thousands of celestial warriors descended from the heavens like falling stars. Golden beams of light crashed into the streets of Ravenshield. The battle for Earth had begun. Divine warriors met shadow beasts across the city. Every clash shook the ground. Every victory pushed the darkness back. Yet Ethan never joined the armies. His eyes never left the Shadow Emperor. Both understood that the fate of every soldier depended on their duel. Without another word, they charged. Stormfang met the Emperor's black sword with unimaginable force. The explosion illuminated the entire continent. Mountains trembled. Rivers changed course. The ocean itself rose into enormous waves. The two ancient rivals exchanged hundreds of strikes in only a few moments. Neither warrior stepped backward. Neither showed fear. The Shadow Emperor suddenly gathered all remaining darkness into a single attack. "This ends now." A massive sphere of black energy formed above the ruined city. It continued growing larger until it covered the entire skyline. Everything beneath it began withering away. Buildings cracked. Trees turned to ash. Even the air became difficult to breathe. Commander Tyr looked toward Odin. "If that attack falls, the world will perish." Odin answered quietly, "I know, but only Ethan can stop it." Below, Ethan looked at the enormous sphere hanging above Earth. He understood immediately. Destroying it would require every remaining drop of divine power he possessed. He thought of the old man who had trusted him. He thought of the Ashford family. He thought of Elena. He thought of every child running through the streets moments before the invasion. Then he smiled. This world deserves another tomorrow. Stormfang began shining brighter than the sun. Ancient runes appeared across Ethan's armor. Golden flames surrounded his entire body. The heavens themselves answered his resolve. Odin's voice echoed across every realm. "My son, you have already proven yourself. You were never great because of your strength. You became great because you chose compassion over pride." Golden energy poured from the gates of Asgard into Stormfang. Every celestial warrior stopped fighting and looked toward Ethan. Every human watched in silence. Even the Shadow Emperor hesitated. "What is this power?" Ethan lifted Stormfang high above his head. "This is hope." With one final step forward, he swung the sword. A single wave of pure golden light crossed the heavens. There was no explosion, no deafening roar, only silence. The wave touched the sphere of darkness. For one heartbeat, nothing happened. Then, the darkness shattered like fragile glass. The golden light continued forward and reached the Shadow Emperor. He looked down at the cracks spreading across his black armor. No, this cannot. Golden light poured through every fracture. The Shadow Emperor slowly smiled. So, I was defeated, not by power, but by the heart I abandoned long ago. His body dissolved into countless particles of black light that slowly disappeared into the wind. The blood moon returned to its natural silver color. The storm vanished. Every remaining shadow creature dissolved into harmless mist. The war was over. Golden sunlight broke through the clouds for the first time in days. People slowly emerged from shelters. Families embraced one another. Children laughed once again. Across the city, damaged buildings still stood, but hope had returned. The world had been saved. Commander Tyr and the warriors of Asgard gathered before Ethan. Every one of them knelt. The Guardian has fulfilled his destiny. Odin himself appeared before his son, for the first time in thousands of years. The All-Father smiled with pride. You have surpassed every warrior who came before you. Ethan lowered his head respectfully. My mission is complete. Odin looked toward Elena, who stood nearby watching quietly. No. He gently placed one hand on Ethan's shoulder. Your greatest journey is only beginning. The heavenly gates slowly began closing. One by one, the warriors of Asgard returned home. Before disappearing, Commander Tyr smiled. Earth is fortunate to have its protector. Soon, only Ethan and Elena remained standing beneath the morning sky. Neither spoke for several moments. Finally, Elena stepped closer. I spent 5 years believing I knew who you were. A tear rolled down her cheek. I was wrong. Ethan smiled gently. You knew the most important part. She looked at him. And what was that? You knew my heart. She laughed softly through her tears. Without another word, she embraced him. For the first time since their marriage. There were no secrets. No misunderstandings. Only trust. Months later, Ravenshield had completely recovered. The Ashford family rebuilt their company and, after learning the truth, finally apologized for the years they had spent judging Ethan. He accepted every apology with kindness, holding no anger in his heart. The servants who had always respected him smiled proudly, knowing the quiet man they had defended was truly a hero. Although the world never learned the full story, strange legends began spreading across different countries. People spoke of a mysterious guardian who appeared whenever darkness threatened innocent lives. Some called him the Golden Warrior. Others called him the Last Guardian. But among those who truly knew the truth, there was only one name, the son of Odin. Even after the greatest battle in history, Ethan chose not to return permanently to Asgard. Instead, he remained on Earth, living the simple life he had come to love. He continued helping neighbors, protecting the weak, and quietly watching over humanity from the shadows. He no longer needed a throne or endless praise. His greatest reward was seeing children laugh freely, families live without fear, and a peaceful sunrise over a world that had been given another chance. And whenever dark clouds gathered on the horizon, a faint streak of golden lightning could sometimes be seen crossing the sky. Those who witnessed it smiled, believing it was nothing more than a beautiful storm. Only Ethan knew the truth. A guardian's duty never truly ends. Some legends are remembered in history books. Others are carved into ancient stone. But the greatest legends live forever in the hearts of the people they protect.